I've been in dogs since 1991. We breed dogs that we want to train. I was out here in western Nebraska riding Harleys and training dogs. I don't sugarcoat anything, and if you don't like it, tough.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Flatliner Kennels podcast with Chris Jobman. We are rolling into season 2 now. This is episode 4 of season 2, our 21st episode overall. If you're just now listening to us, make sure you go back and listen to the episodes that we did last year. There's some pretty good content in there. Today we're going to move on again with the Flowchart. And I'm going to let Chris take it away. But first, I want to get a little update from Chris on what's going on down there at Texas and what he's been doing. So how's it going tonight, Chris?
Hi, Elliot. How are you?
Doing great.
Good. Yeah, we're down in Texas. We made it a few days ago, and beautiful weather so far. Green grass, which I haven't seen in a while. Dan and I are down here getting after it. We got 2 rigs, 34 dogs, and our everyday deal is we just get up, get to the dogs about sun up and get them let out. We have airing yards and stuff down here. We let them out, let them do their thing. We load up, and we depend on what we're doing, land or water. And we're out and throw some marks. And the dogs that we have down here are the younger dogs that we have. They're the youngest one. We have like a couple, maybe 1 or 2 season passes, all the way up to the flashes of the world. The big ones. So it's kind of fun to watch these young guys come through the ranks. Andrew built, all these younger guys last fall and worked on them all winter and did a nice job with them. We run them down here, and they're pretty nice dang dogs, man. They, sometimes I don't always get to see the babies every single day, because we're busy and going and they're looking pretty good. Everybody's happy and going and healthy, and everybody's doing well.
Do you feel like the rust is kind of shaken up at this point and it's back to where you were in full go?
No, not even close. Not even close. Now the rust is on me probably more than the dogs, but we're getting there. It takes a little while for them to get going, and we're starting them kind of easy down here. We're doing singles off of multiple guns, running very kind of simple blinds, and then we'll start advancing and getting harder and harder as we go. Especially for the dogs that are in the Grand here in April, but the quality of setups and the difficulty of the setups will get harder and harder as the dogs get more comfortable with getting back to rock and rolling and doing how I do things.
Now you're staying at a kennel. Is this a colleague, a friend of yours?
No, it's just a friend of ours down here. It's not really a kennel. Just a friend of ours down here. Got a bunch of land and knows a bunch of people in the area, and we go from land to land to land, and we built airing yards down here years ago, and there got 4 of them down here, and we're just kind of mobile. We just move all over the place, and our farthest drive is maybe 10 minutes, so it's really handy. We're a good central location and moving around, and just we kind of hope the rain stays away, because if it rains, it's pretty difficult for us to go anywhere at all. But we got some really nice grounds and pretty centralized located, so it's nice. And we usually try to run some hunt tests while we're down here. Usually I concentrate on HRC type stuff when we're down here, and we're probably not going to be able to do that this year. Most of them are full. Been very difficult trying to get into those things, but we have a lot of tests to run when we get home anyway, so we run all summer long, and I'm not really concentrating on that right now down here, but getting them rocking and rolling so when we get home we get going.
Well, cool. Let's go ahead and jump into the next stage of the flowchart, and then we'll hit a couple questions at the end. So where are we on the flowchart today?
So now we've stopped. Our last podcast was about mini T, and run by. So once this is all done, and everybody in our program, everybody thinks, we're in basics. Basics, to most people think is like force fetch. Basics to me are everything from obedience all the way through and including basically D-cheat and swim by. So we're still in technically basics, and I don't even consider this transition yet. This to me is basics. Transition is everything after D-cheat and swim by. So we've done the mini T, we've done the T, we've done the run by. Now we're going into water force. And at the kennel, we're very fortunate. We have 2 swim by ponds, and we do all of our water forcing on swim by ponds and on our swim. If you don't have a swim by pond, just do what you can do, what you can find. The biggest thing about water forcing is water. When you're doing this and you're forcing them into the water, dogs should have already, they already should run water marks. Kind of like to run water marks, right? Enjoy the water, understand swimming, understand how to go out and get, how to navigate through the water. And the biggest thing is make sure the water is warm enough, because the water at this point in time is going to be a relief form, right? So don't be, hey, the ice just came off the water 3 weeks ago, and let's just say it's 65 degrees out, but the ice just come off. The water's still freezing. So let the water warm up, and everybody's going to ask me, how warm should the water be? I don't know. I'm sure there's somebody that knows that, answer that question, but I don't even have a clue. But so we're going to do, it's the same exact process as when we did force to pile. Okay. You've got our ponds it looks like a golf course. It's all mowed up. The dogs can see the bumpers across the water. They're kind of on an incline. So when they swim across the water, and you've seen it, Elliot, they swim across the water. There's like a little incline. The dogs can see the bumpers over there, the whole 9 yards. And it's just like force to pile. You're going to start them off throwing some fun bumpers into the water, get them going. Maybe some fun bumpers all the way across to the pile so you can get them going all the way across, get them comfortable swimming across this pond. And we're going to start them just like we did force pile. We're going to front finish our dogs. They're going to be looking at us, right? And then at this point, we're probably 5 yards from the water's edge. So I am looking at the water. The dog's looking at me. And we're going to take a bumper. We're going to throw it over their head. And I'm going to say back with a right verbal back. The dog is going to spin. And at that point, when he spins and gets going, anywhere halfway between the dog and the water, you're going to give like a continuous stick like we talked. The dog's going to get that pressure and then let off, and the dog's going to jump and get in the water. Timing is
2 second. That's about a 2 second, like 1001.
Maybe just 1001, like a Nick, 1001, and then let off. You got to understand something. Timing is of the utmost importance. You don't want that dog having any collar pressure on it when it's hitting the water. That pressure needs to be on land. The water is a relief. Okay, that makes sense?
Yeah.
The water is a relief. Okay? We will get into forcing in the water here pretty soon because I do that. I firmly believe in it 100%. But we are forcing the dog into the water at this point. So the water is a relief.
The goal here is anytime I send you, dog, and you go straight and there's water ahead of you, you go right into it. Because dogs naturally will be like, if they don't see it and they don't know it's there, their natural inclination is to stay out of the water, correct?
Yes, or if they don't want to, or if they think it's too cold, or if they've gotten pressure for a down the shore water body and they don't want to go back in the water. Gives them no, it's just like when you say back, they leave. They have that muscle memory, that impulse to take off. Same way with this thing. When you say back and there's water in front of you, you better get in it. Mm-hmm. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So now you're front, they're front sending, and you're at 5 yards. Now let's move back to maybe 10 yards, and you're giving them a right back, and they're turning to the right, pressure, jump in the water, turn to the left, pressure, jump in the water. You're forcing them into the water. Okay, once they understand this and they're turning and they're not getting weird, like going to the water's edge and maybe skirting around and slinking in, or they're not getting in, they're trying to run around. Once they're stable enough, you're staying back, they're turning, they're running, you're forcing, they're jumping in the water. Water's a relief. They're swimming across, they're getting the bumper you threw over their head. I like to do it when they're throwing over their head. Once you get back, let's just say you're back 10 yards. You quit throwing it over their head, and you just throw it, and they see the pile back there. You can do this. Back, they turn, they run a little bit, they get a few yards from the water, give them pressure, jump in the water, swim across, get the bumper. Once that's stable, I like to move back up a little bit, like back to 5 yards. and now you're going to side send them. This is all going to go really, really quick. If your dog's got a good water attitude, because it's ran marks, it's done all these things. If your dog has a good water attitude and you've done a really good job on force to pile, you've not pushed your dog, you've not skipped steps, the dog is stable, and all your yard work coming up, this is going to go fast. It's going to go really, really fast because it's just like force to pile. It's just water's involved. Okay. So now we're going to move up to like 5 yards out, and you're going to side send these. See the bumpers across there? You say back, you let them run, you continue a snick, and then when they jump in, there's no pressure on them at all. They hit the water. It's a relief. Now they're swimming across to go get it. Okay. Now you're going to start moving back away from the water's edge. Now you're going to start, let's say you're at 10 yards now. You'll say back. And now this is when you kind of want to maybe give a little bit of a continuous, I'm going to call it burn. It's not burning them, everybody. It's just a continuous pressure. Now you may want to give them a little bit of continuous. You say back. They run away from you. They're getting relatively close to the water. Maybe give a 1 or 2 second burn. Let off, they jump in the water. Now you're really forcing them. They have that impulse to jump in the water no matter what. They're impulse. And then now you can start, you say side send them from back, nick, and you say back again when they jump in, okay? It's the same sequence. Back, nick, yell back, and they jump in the water. It's the same sequence. And you start moving back. You can go back as far as you want if you want to. I only go back at the most 15, 20 yards. I mean, because we're going to get into a lot of that other stuff down the road as far as, long water entries and stuff. But once they understand back, leave, pressure with the collar, yell back again, and they jump in the water. And once they understand that and they're stable and you've moved back, I like to kind of move up again just a little bit to about the 5 yard range again. They understand when you give them pressure, you say back, and they jump in the water. They understand to get in the water because that's the relief. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that say, don't ever give your dog collar pressure in the water. You're going to ruin their attitude, blah, 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 blah. This is where you teach them how to deal with collar pressure in the water, because now it's just like force to pile. If you guys remember those, I force in route up and down the entire line, not just at one location, the entire line in different locations. We're going to do the exact same thing here. So who has all seen a dog that you've gone through the swim by, you've de-cheated the whole 9 yards, and you start running blind, you start de-cheating, and you handle the dog. Maybe the dog cheated, but you got back in the water. Now the dog won't get out of the damn water. They just swim up and down the bank, not wanting to get out, okay? If you don't teach them this, there's no fix for that, right? So now what I'm going to do, I'm not going to even force them. I'm going to say back. They're going to run. They're going to jump in the water. I'm going to let them swim. Just like we did in force to pile, I'm going to let them get 3/4 of the way across the water. I'm going to give them a continuous nick or a small burn, and I'm going to say back, and I'm going to force them out of the water. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And
forcing them out of the pond. You're hitting them
other side of the pond. They're still swimming. They're almost getting out. Burn, back, and then I'm going to force them up out of the water to the bumpers.
So the first one is the land is hot and the water's safe, and then at the end the water becomes hot and the land is safe.
No, the water's not hot. It's we're
that moment.
Well, what it is we're forcing them to the bumpers, whether it's on land or the water. Their impulse isn't necessarily to get out of the water. Their impulse is get to the bumpers as fast as possible.
Gotcha. So they're not thinking about the water; they're just seeing that bumper.
Correct. Because if you've done force pile correctly,
gotcha.
The land's not hot. It's you've taught them the impulse is to get to the bumper as fast as possible. Mm-hmm. Correct. Because if you did it wrong on the land, they think that land's a hot spot. Now you have the flaring and stuff that we talked about. Right. They're flaring. You've done it. Something's wrong. You're communicating not right. Something's not right in their head. So we're not making the water hot because we've already taught them the water is the relief by forcing them on land into the water. Mm-hmm. Now we're letting them swim all the way across and build this momentum, right? And they can see the bumpers. They're white. They can see it. And then when they're getting close, you force them in the water. They don't even realize they're in water anymore because it's a relief. And you force them there and you say back. It's the exact same thing as forcing them into the pile on land. The water's not hot. The land's not hot. It's the impulse. I got to get to that bumper as quickly as possible.
Gotcha.
See what I'm saying?
Yep.
So we've already taught that. So then I'm going to force them out of the water. Now, at this point, they may get a little bit weird about coming back to you in the water. Just go, just get them to come back, right? You don't have to give a bunch of pressure up there. Just get them to come back, and they will, and they'll swim back across you. So now what we're going to do is, everybody's got to understand, give them some free runs, some free swims, make it fun. You don't just burn them all the time, right? Just give them some free runs, free swims, make it fun. We are going to do this en route, up and down the line in the water, all the way across it. So we forced them on the land, forced them into the water. We've let them swim. We forced them in the water, out of the water. We're going to do another one when they're halfway going across, another, burn or nick, whatever you want, continuous nick, burn, back, force them in there, en route halfway. Then we're going to force them, once you said back, they're going to jump in the water. They're going to go about a quarter of the way across, burn, back. We're going to force up and down the line just like we did in Force to Pile. We're going to teach these dogs how to deal with some pressure in the water and not making it like it's the end of the world. And I can tell, everybody's like, you never force in the water. I promise you, we do it all the time. We do it with every dog. As long as they understand it on land and you are not burning them up with super, super high pressure in the water, right? They understand what you're asking them. They know the water is not doing it to them. They know exactly what is asked of them because you've done it properly on land. And we've done these very simple steps. That's why we're building these dogs very slowly. We're building them and teaching them how to deal with some pressure mentally, how to deal with pressure, how to shut it off. And they understand it. They're like, oh, I get it. This is just like, you're not wanting to burn them on 8s and 9s in the water. I mean, don't be stupid. Keep your pressure low, move up a little bit more. You don't have to get crazy because they should understand it. If you see a dog freaking out, let's just say your dog is running good watermarks. It's got a good water attitude. It likes the water. It's got a good attitude. If you see your dog starting to freak out in the water when you're starting to do this, a couple things have happened. You've either way too hot on the pressure in the water or you didn't do a good enough job on land explaining to the dog what you are asking them to do. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, they're confused.
Yeah, they're just confused. And if they're confused coming through this, I promise you better get it switched. You better get it fixed now because you are at some point going to have to add pressure to the dog in the water. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Down the shore water blinds, cheating. There's not sitting to the whistle in the water, sitting slow sits. There's so many things that can go wrong in the water because water, I always tell people water is twice as hard as land. So you better get it really, really good on land before going into the water. And then you better get really good in the water on all these basics before you start running into major problems that you're not going to be able to fix.
And it makes me think of when we were going through Force Fetch, you talked a lot about building mental toughness and those types of that groundwork back in e-collar conditioning probably helps in these situations too, where you have if you have skimped
and not done your basics right coming up through this, and you've gone through it way too fast, you've sort of done it, you're going to start seeing them dogs mentally deteriorate because you're adding so much pressure. You're trying to rush through it. You're not letting them mentally mature, and you're not doing it right. You're trying to get through it so quickly. You're trying to get the marks and run blinds because that's funner. Or more fun. So it's a very simple process, honestly. If you've done it correctly on land and your dog understands it, this is going to go very, very, very easily. I mean, really easily. I know there's other ways of forcing to the water and all that sort of things I've heard about, but this is how I do it. I've been doing it for 24 years now. This is my 24th year. And this has really worked good for us. And this is how I like to do it like this. And the dog understands how to take pressure in the water, how to get in the water. And again, get another important item on this thing is understands how to get out of the water. You have a tool to get the dog out of the water as well. Okay. Honestly, that's going to go quick right there because we've already talked about it. So that's all I have on water force. and we're going to do some questions right now. I know that we went through that quick, but if you did that correctly on land, this is going to be a very, very easy step.
And you're done when your dog you said you went out to like 20-ish yards when your dog
and you can move
into the water, getting it come back.
You can move back as far as you want. I mean, now let's just say now the dog you move back to 20 yards and you forced them into the water, but then I moved up, right? So when I try to force in route up and down the line in the water and force them out of the water, I like to move up because it simplifies things a little bit. They're not thinking about running in these really, really far and then jumping in the water and then being forced in route and you're back there 40 yards. It simplifies everything for them, okay? Because you're trying to communicate the dog to, force in route, get out of the water. Now, after that's all said and done, and you've forced in route, you forced out of the water, you forced in the water, and your dog is confident, comfortable, and stable, by all means, move as far back as you possibly want to and see if your water force is working. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? If you want to go back 60, 70, 80, 100 yards, go right ahead. And on that pond and see if, and you can force, you can stay back and you can run them all the way down there. As I say, you're 100 yards back, run them all the way down there and you can force them into the water from 100 yards away. Mm-hmm. Right? You can go back as far as your little heart desires. But I like to move up when I'm forcing in route on the water. Right. And I don't go really far back when I'm forcing in the water. I think you don't really need to do that. 20, 30 yards is plenty because you're going to start getting into farther back and you start doing D-cheat and cheating singles and that sort of thing. I think at this point, you want to keep it relatively simple and black and white for them. And you want to move back just a little bit. That's fine. Go right ahead. But I wouldn't stay back there forever. I would move on. Okay. So that's all I have on water force. Unless you have something else, we are going to, and if you guys have any questions on water force, I did that kind of quickly because it's simple. If you've done all your stuff, like I said earlier, this is going to go very, very easy. But like I said, make your dog comfortable in the water with marks and stuff before coming into water force, because don't just make this dog's 10th time in the water with really working is water force. Make them comfortable in it and then start.
Yeah, I don't have any questions at all. Like I said, I think pretty straightforward, pretty
good,
simple.
Good. Well, let's answer a few questions and we'll go from there.
Let's do it. The first one, we've got Adam Wood. And then, again, these questions come from the Facebook group. Make sure you're joining up over there, Flatliner Kennels Facebook group. Adam Wood asks, Chris, what is your biggest regret in dog training?
Oh, boy. There's a few of them. I think I might have talked this on a podcast one time, but years and years ago, I got into a fight. I want to say a fight, but it was I was trying to teach a dog how to angle in the water on a tech pond, and I'll never forget as long as I live. It's on our tech pond in front of my house, and I was trying to teach this dog how to angle into the water, and she would cheat the water and go wide left. The water was on the right. She would cheat the water left. Then I would try to help her out and teach her to get in. Then she would dive straight right into the water. She never got, and then never got into, we got into a happy, this has been a long, long time ago. We never got into a happy medium where she angled in really nice because I was trying to do one thing. She was mentally and wasn't getting my picture. And I just kind of kept messing with her on it. I just kept going instead of cutting my losses that day and just stopping. Right. I just kept on her like, you're going to do this. Right. And this dog at this point was not even 2, right? As we're trying to do all this stuff. And she ended up being a Grand Hunter Retriever champion and a master hunter, a really nice dog. But as long as she lived, and she I think she retired at like 7 or 8 years old. I can't really remember. But from that point on, as long as she lived, I could be at a hunt test, a master test, or HRC test, or anything like that. And if for some reason in her brain that clicked that it had that same sort of look of me fighting her to get in the water, that same sort of look, that long angle entry, it was a 50% chance if she was going to no-go me or not.
He's just like, nope.
I'm telling you, and it would, some days it would be fine. Other days it would be like, nope. And I had her one time at a master test, and anyway, I said back, and she literally flipped on her back and started yiping. And I haven't touched her. I have not touched her in 5 years. She wasn't even shot for 5 years. And she just, and I didn't even do anything to her. You want to talk about being embarrassed? I'm like, well, but that's just how it registered in her head that anytime that little, and it always kind of came with a difficult marking setup or a big decision to be made, like a decision like to get in and cut a slice or if it was square, we were good. But if it was a long water entry, for her in her brain, it could be a long water entry could be 5 yards for her, or it could be 50. You have no idea when it was going to happen. It just in her brain, if she had that same sort of look,
flashback.
It just, I'm telling you, a flashback. And I'm like, and I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that till the day I die. Now, when we get into these, long entries and water entries and angling in, and if it's not going well, I cut my losses. I get in, get out. I throw a bumper. I teach, throw a bumper, teach, and I'm telling you, and there wasn't a lot of collar pressure involved when I say I got into the fight with this dog. It was more of a no here, no here, no here, and that's all it took. This didn't happen in 5 minutes. It was no here, no here, no. Trying to figure it out, move up, and that mental stress to that day, she'll never forget that. It haunted her for the rest of her life.
It just seared into her brain, didn't it?
It did. It just manifests itself in something crazy, That's probably, honestly, probably the biggest training regret I've had. Now I've made some mistakes in the national and the grand that I can think of that kind of haunt me to this day. That most of those dogs end up getting their titles anyway. But I kind of pride myself on not making handler mistakes, handler errors in those big instances. But I can still there's some mistakes that stand out in my head that I'm not going to talk about because there's just too many of them. But it's such a split second decision that they stick in my head to this day that I made 20 years ago. And
you don't want to share one example of them?
Well, I don't know. There's just. I don't know. There's just
stressing you out. I can see you getting stressed.
Well, I'll just share it on my dog. So I had a dog named Breaker a bazillion years ago, probably one of the best dogs I ever touched, if not the best dog. And he was running the 4 series of the Grand. He wasn't, he was 24 months old or whatever it was, 23 months or whatever it was. And he was in the 4 series. He was clean in the 4 series, right? And I got stupid and I got arrogant. I figured he'd figure it out. Well, there was a little short check down bird, and short check down birds for Breaker were always tough for him because he loved to go. He was a big, hard charging dog. And we were I don't remember where we were at, but there was a log he had to jump to get to this bird, right? And the mark was only 20 yards. And this was the last mark to be picked up. And when he was coming back with his second mark, the wind flipped. And it was at our back for the longest time. And when he came back, it now started coming right to left. Well, the blind was hot behind this mark. But it was deeper than you thought. It was 50, 60 yards deep. Well, when he jumped that log, he jumped over the bird. And I let him go longer because he was always really good at going and then coming back. Hey, I missed it. I'm coming back. Well, he jumped over that damn bird, and he went down there, and I think, he's going to come back. He's going to come back. And about that time, I'm about to blow the whistle. That wind must have been swirling in those trees. He smelled that hot blind, and it was over. He smelled that hot blind and picked up the hot blind and was done. Mm-hmm. And he was clean in the 4 series. All I had to do was pick up this little short mark and run a blind. I could have handled to it. Yeah. He was on 2s. It was done. And I cost him a grand pass because I got confident in him that he would pick up this mark. But the blind influenced it. I knew the wind changed, and all I had to do was blow the damn whistle.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all I had to do. And nowadays, I'll never forget that, because nowadays, if I have a handle to spare 3rd, 4th series or whatever, and I see the dog getting in trouble, I will use that in 2 seconds to use that whistle to live to fight another day.
Yeah.
Instead of watching them, just watch them go out. You know what I mean? So
Mistakes like that, I'm sure, have been part of making you a better player today.
It's so frustrating, and I pride myself on not making many mistakes when I'm running that sort of thing. And when I'm done for the day at like the Grands or the Nationals or even a weekend test, on my way home, and I will sit there and I'll think about it in my head. Could I have been better today? Could I have done things better? And there's been times I drove home and go, I was really good today. I was on point. My whistles were all really good. And other times I'll be driving home going, I really sucked today. The dogs got through it, but I could have been better. And I constantly am beating myself up over stuff like that. So.
All right. Well, let's move on to the next question. Before we do hit the next question, all of you listening, we've got questions continuing to come in about vocal dogs, and we've talked so much about vocal dogs. And so if you want to hear about that, the best episode to hit, I think, is episode 4. It's the second one where we had Chris Aiken on, where both Chris's talked for a long period of time about dealing with vocal dogs, specifically in hunting situations, but in general, vocal dogs. So we're not going to answer that anymore just because we spent so much time on it. So check out that episode if you've submitted a question or you're curious about it.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of multiple questions, duplicate questions on here, and we've talked about a lot of stuff, but yeah.
Right. All right. The next question is from Kevin Luman. He said, maybe this has been discussed and I missed it, but why do people put a hand down over a dog's head? Is it a lining deal or reassurance for the dog? If you do put your hand down, is it different on marks versus blinds?
For years and years and years, I didn't put my hand down on my dogs at all. I just, I sent them without my hand down. I just try to use voice inflection. And I noticed when I started running some quals and I ran master, and I noticed the difference in depth. So I'm a big believer in communicating with my dogs, huge believer in it, whether it be voice or hand or feet or legs or body position. And my rule of thumb is the hand down, it doesn't really, it kind of drives them, if that, so to speak. And what I mean by that is it gives, with my hand down and voice inflection, is a team. They work together. So like on a short check down bird, like a really short check down bird, let's just say the go bird was, in AKC, right? I put my hand down send them on the go bird. And that is a steadiness tool. They don't get to leave until my hand is down. That is and they know the difference between HRC and AKC. And so when the last bird hits, I put my hand down. That's a steady, and they can't leave until my hand's down and I say their name, they go. Let's just say they go out and get the go bird. It's a longer mark. And they come back in and say the right mark's a short bird, 20 yards or however long. Check down birds are relevant. Field trial check down bird might be 200 yards after going 400. So maybe I'll come in and I'll do a no hand send at this point on a short check down bird, a no hand send, no hands at all. And I'll go easy with no hands at all. I'm trying to communicate with them. It's a very, very short check down bird. Go in and find it, right? If I have, let's just say they go ahead and get that bird, but now I have to drive them past that area of the fall to a longer third bird to be picked up, like an indent a triple. I put my hand down and my voice inflection is even more like, flat, like it's louder. It's not screaming, but it's louder, longer, and more inflection with my hand. That's telling them to go. Get out, just drive past that area and go. Okay. And then I always use my hand to send on the blind. Now, I say dead bird right there. And I put my hand down good right there. Right? And then they're looking at the spot where I want to go. That hand is just a little bit of reassurance for them. You're looking in the right spot. That's exactly where I want you to go. And I kick them off. I do the same thing on marks. Like at the Grand or a National or even a weekend test, your dogs may or may not see all of the marks. But if you put your hand down and you really talk them into and go, that's it right there. And they focus out there on that, something out there, whatever they think that's out there, and you kick them off, that communication with the hand and your voice, they'll just go out there and run because they believe in you, that you're sending them in the right direction, right? And they just believe in you, and some dogs are like, yep, I got it, it's right there, and they just go out there and get it. And they may not have seen the damn mark, but you guys have developed a team and they trust in you, and that's some communication on how to do all that. And a lot of times I don't even introduce the hand in my basic yard work, and we talked about this last episode, I think, that if they drop your hand and you look up at your hand, that's an avoidance thing. With those dogs, I don't even put my hand down until maybe I get into wagon wheel. And then I put my hand down and I start communicating where I want them to go on that. Or if a dog lets me, I do it early in the process. Okay?
Yeah. I think that does it. All right. We are on to a question by Trevor Hayden. My dog has been running cold blinds for about a month, runs T pattern, wide drill, all those very well. When I give her a left back at a distance, she will turn the wrong way here and there, but it only happens when she is 50 plus yards away. Inside of that, she spins the right way. Should I be stopping and recalling her for that? Should I be taking a few steps left to put English on the cast? Or am I worrying about something that is too early in training to worry about?
Well, you need to worry about it for sure, Trevor, because distance erodes training. We've all talked about that. Distance erodes training. Now, has this dog ran, you said T pattern on wide drill. Have you ran a good pattern blind? I believe a real firm believer in pattern blind programs. So, that dog stops, casts correctly in pattern blinds. If you haven't and you're not going to do that, that's fine. I know people that don't. But here's the thing. If that dog turns the wrong direction, you give a right back and it turns the left, and then he goes and gets a bumper or bird, all you're doing is reinforcing bad behavior and disobedience. So if you give a right back and that dog turns to the left, you need to stop that dog immediately. Recall a little bit, recall it, re-give the cast. Turns the wrong way again, stop, recall. Now, I'm not going to tell you to put pressure on that dog with the e-collar because I don't know if you collar properly, collar condition it correctly. I don't know any of those things. So I'm not going to tell you how to nick, indirect pressure. I'm not going to say those things because you didn't specify that you needed, collar pressure. All you said was recall. So I'm assuming you're using attrition, which is your recall method. I would stop that dog, recall it, even closer, stop, maybe move up. You need to move up and give that cast again. And then if it gives the right cast, you let it roll. Eventually, you keep doing that enough times, recalling, moving up, closing distance. Eventually, the dog understands it's supposed to take that at any distance. So if that dog, let's just say at 50 yards, it's starting to be disobedient. In a few weeks or month, however long it takes, it's turning the wrong way at 100 yards. Okay? Now you're winning. And eventually, that dog is going to turn the right way if you make it turn the right way every single time. It's like muscle memory. They will turn the right way as long as you make it do it every single time. And I don't, like I said, I don't know what your collar program was, but at this point, I would use attrition instead of collar pressure. If you have done a really good job of collar conditioning and the dog understands it, indirect pressure is a great way to go. We've talked about in depth, I'm sure, in some of these episodes. But yes, stop the dog, recall, and recast.
Quick review of the definition of indirect pressure.
Indirect pressure is giving pressure on a known command to get a different response on a different command. So indirect pressure is, let's just say he stops the dog, and this is some of this stuff is on our YouTube videos that you did last summer. So you stop the dog, you give a right back, and it turns and goes the wrong way. So now you're going to stop the dog. You're going to recall it, sit it back down, which is attrition. You're going to go tweet, and then you're going to give pressure with the e-collar, nick, and recast. You're giving pressure on the sit to get a proper response on the cast. It's very hard to explain in layman terms, but you're almost resetting that dog's mind when you do that. They're like, oh, I got to pay attention. So you're giving pressure on a sit and then casting.
Recall it back a little ways.
Recall it. I like to recall it back.
Whistle, sit, pop.
Yeah, I like to recall it to break that crappy momentum, especially in a baby dog. Recall it, break that crappy momentum, blow the sit whistle. Once the dog is sat, give pressure, nick, and then recast.
Right.
And that's how I do it. That's how I like to do it. Because everybody's seen those dogs that if you give direct pressure, which means the dog turns the wrong way, you just start burning and making the dog sit for turning the wrong way. If those dogs there don't want to move anymore, eventually they're like, I don't know where to go. If you, for some reason, indirect pressure kind of resets their brain a little bit, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. It's like, hey, you know what you're supposed to do. Focus and do it.
Correct. Pay attention. Let's do it.
Right. All right. Well, there we go.
All right.
Taken care of.
Thank you.
So guys, yep. Thank you too. And we will be back in 2 more weeks. Right now, we're putting out 2 episodes a month on Wednesdays. So be ready for that and be thinking of your questions as we come back for more. Well, Chris, I hope everything continues to go well down there in Texas. Keep getting on those dogs.
Well, we're going to give it hell. Me and Dan are down here working our butt off. So thank you guys for listening. Give us some questions. Give us some feedback. We appreciate it. See everybody at the line. Take that in.
Gotta strike this chord with the humble hearts, bearing heavy chains and blue collar scars. Inevitably they're gonna get their way. If it don't take that fight, take it to the grave.